Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. So today I'm going to be talking about how much does an airline pilot actually get paid. This has been coming up in some of the Q&As I've been having quite regularly, so I thought I would attack the question. I'm going to split today's video up into three main areas. The first one is looking at cadets or junior first officers, those that are new into the airline industry. And then I'll be looking at experienced first officers, so guys that have been there maybe 2 years plus. And then finally, I'll be looking at captains. Stay tuned. So before going any further, if you like the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So I'll get straight into it then. So someone coming straight into the industry as a cadet or first officer can expect to earn somewhere between £20,000 and £65,000 a year. So you ask, why is there such variability and how is that going to affect me? Generally, what kind of numbers can I expect to earn if I land an airline job? You're going to have to do a course that's called a type rating course, which is basically a training course to teach you how to fly the airline specific airplane that they operate. So airlines have different strategies to recover that type rating cost from you. Basically three main strategies that they will use to get you through your training. So the first one on that is some airlines will actually ask you to pay for the type rating cost up front. The reason for that is a lot of airlines have learned, and what they found is if they pay the type rating cost themselves, great, you come in, you get the training, you stick around for 6 months, and then you decide to go off and do something else with a different airline. They've now lost out on that investment. So to cover themselves, they'll probably ask, hey, can you pay this cost yourself? And that cost can be anywhere from £10,000 to about £30,000, just depending on what the aircraft fleet and type is. So the next one then is if you find yourself on that kind of profile or that kind of airline, you find yourself probably in the middle to upper end of that £20,000 to £60,000 band. And that is in a reflection and acknowledgement that you have paid the type rating cost up front yourself. The next one is some airlines will actually go midway and use what is called a bonded program. So from that, they'll ask you to pay a deposit anywhere from the region of £5,000 to £10,000. And then if for whatever reason you leave within the stipulated time frame, let's say 5 or 10 years, it just varies by airline, they'll calculate a settlement figure that you would have remaining on your bond. And that is basically to allow them once again to recover the type rating cost. Now, if you're on such a scheme, what will probably happen is you'll start off at the lower end of the salary band, but don't despair. What tends to happen is your increase happens fairly quickly and fairly steep as you hit the various training and seniority milestones. Some of those can be purely training milestone dependent. So once you're signed off to do X, Y, and Z, you get your increase, or it might be on an hour basis. So once you reach 500 hours or 1,000 hours, whatever, you'll get signed off. Or the final one is an annual type system. And again, it all depends on the airline and how they are operating. Now, the final one, guys, is certain airlines will actually not charge you a penny for your training or for your type rating to get a job. Now, these airlines, you will almost guaranteed find yourself right at the bottom of the pay scale, and invariably part of the program or your training program will involve doing maybe 12 or 18 months in various departments around the airline before you then come on to actually starting your flight training. These are great because they give you a great feel and they give you a good grounding of how the airline runs its business. The only downside is you probably earn a lot less initially, but once you do start earning, it will go up fairly quickly. Whilst I'm on first officer pay, there's certain things I just wanted to share with you and to discuss. So at the moment, we're deep in COVID-19 crisis, which is pretty disastrous for the airlines. The majority of airlines out there are only flying a low single-digit percentage of the actual fleet. So a lot of pilots have actually been furloughed, and depending on what the local government support is in the various countries, pilots are either getting paid nothing or they're getting 50% all the way up to 80%, and even in some cases 100%. So it's important that, okay, while some of the figures are coming across as high and really good, you've also got to put into perspective that the airline industry does easily get affected by global issues. So guys, before I move on to the pay for senior first officers or experienced first officers and captains, what I did want to talk about is how exactly you will get paid. So the airline industry actually sets its pay up initially with a certain amount which is given to you as a basic salary, and then you'll get a certain amount of extra pay which is called sector pay or flight pay, and it's basically an hourly rate paid depending on the amount of work that you do. Again, airlines have all got different strategies, so some of them might give you a fairly low basic salary but a high variable pay, or some might give you a high basic and a low variable pay. All have their advantages and disadvantages. If you're doing a lot of flying, then it probably is better for you to be on the variable pay. If you're doing not a great amount of flying, then it's probably better for you to be on a high basic. Now, there's a great site, Pilot Jobs Network, which is actually shown in the description. And that's not perfect, but it's a pretty accurate place to go if you want to have a look to decide, oh, if I go for this airline, what can I expect and so on. As I say, it's not 100%, but it gives you a pretty solid indication of what you can expect. So on the pay front, guys, one of the things that you also want to consider, rather than just looking at the pound value of what I'm actually going to get in my bank account, is to actually look at what the total compensation looks like in terms of fringe benefits as well. Do you have a pension provided? Do you have other fringe benefits like private healthcare? Do you have access to cycle to work and things like that? That's also pretty important. And the final one, which every pilot will tell you that it absolutely drives their life, is the type of roster. So airlines do the roster based on a variable roster, which is every 4-6 weeks you get your roster and you don't know what's coming until you get to 4-6 weeks before, and you just look and it'll say, right, you're doing X, Y, Z, and it's almost random. Other airlines have a fixed roster pattern, so you'll do 5 days on, 4 days off, or 5 days on, 3 days off. It just varies by airline. Again, depending on your personal situation, your personal circumstance, it may make more sense that you go with an airline for a variable roster or a fixed roster, although the pay may not be as great in one or the other area. So again, another consideration for you to think of. So the other one I wanted to talk about is also the type of contract, whether it's a full-time contract or part-time contract. So the conundrum that a lot of airlines have is in the summer, everyone wants to travel everywhere, but in the winter, the demand tends to go down. So how do airlines manage this demand or the change in demand on an annual basis? What a lot of airlines are now offering is part-time or seasonal contracts where you work on a 75% or 80 or 85% basis. So in the summer, you'll be flying full-time, but in the winter, you may not be flying at all, or you'll be flying for much reduced hours. Now, this can be great if it works for your personal situation. Maybe you've got a young family you want to spend time with, or perhaps you want to use the winter months to go traveling around South America, or whatever it is. Again, that's another consideration you want to think about. So the next one I'm going to talk about is what salary you can expect as an experienced first officer. So experienced first officer, we're normally looking at minimum 2 years, 3 years of flying, but it can be much earlier. It can be much earlier than that, depending on your airline and how they class experience and non-experience. And in that range, you'd be expecting to earn somewhere between £65,000 and £120,000 a year. Just a big note of caution though, that £120,000 a year is normally reserved, or that upper end of the bracket is normally only for long haul guys who've been in the company for 20 years or so and plus, and have taken a lot of annual increments. For a short haul company, you can expect probably that to be capped around about 85k, and from 65 to about 85k, you'll probably have been flying for between, let's call it 3, 4, 5, anywhere up to about 8 years. And most short haul companies would expect you within that time range to be looking at your command or to becoming a captain anyway. For the long haul guys, okay, it does go much higher, but the downside is you are expecting to get your command much later because it's all seniority based. So on a long haul airline, you might not get your command position until 15 or 20 years in, but your increments would just be at a reasonably modest pace, but they will be taking place annually. So guys, for the final part of the video, I'm going to be talking about how much do captains earn. So a captain can expect to earn anywhere from about £100,000 to about £250,000 a year. Most guys, though, on the short haul fleets will probably earn between £110,000 to about £130,000 or £140,000. So you get to the higher end of the bracket, you've generally got to been in the airline for a really, really long time. We're talking 15, 20 years plus, and you'd normally have additional training responsibilities. So for example, you'll be a line training captain, or you'll be a type rating instructor, or even be an examiner. And once again, to get to the top end of the bracket, you'd normally need to be in a long haul legacy airline, but you'd have been there now with probably a solid 10, 15 years as a first officer, and then now 15 or 20 years as a captain. So you'd have been there for a really long time. Just finally, just to temper off everything that I've said, although the money looks great, one of the things that you will be, or most people find themselves, is they're carrying a lot of debt from their training loans. It costs, anywhere from about sort of 80 to about £120,000 to train to become a pilot. So you've got this cost to consider as well, and how you're going to get that. So a lot of your initial salary when in the early years is going towards paying off your debts. And then finally, the airline industry is incredible. The pilot profession is fantastic, and you will thoroughly enjoy yourself. But the main thing is don't do it for the money, because if you do, you'll find you'll fail pretty quickly, just from the intensity of the training and the level of commitment that you need to give it. Guys, once again, if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the page. I'll keep you informed and keep you updated on all the new content that comes out. Thanks again. Cheers.